welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast, brought to you in association with our friends at Soccer Coach Weekly, reflecting our shared ambition to help coaches have the most effective, enjoyable and successful coaching journey for them and their players. We hope you enjoyed this episode and thanks for listening. James Brooks, welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, yeah. How are you?
I'm very, very happy. We are doing the podcast in exactly the style it should be done since the very beginning. But when COVID kicked in, it kind of went more Zoom and virtual with regards to getting guests on, which was great because you could reach out to people who are further afield. But the fact we do live very close together and we're doing a podcast, we get a chance to sit in the garden with a beer in the sunshine.
If someone had said to me, please come round to my house, I'll ply you with beer and come and talk about football in the garden on a sunny day, then there was only going to be one answer. Yeah,
I didn't even have to buy the beer, to be fair. Brilliant. Well, thanks for this. I'm sure it'll come through in the episode anyway. Obviously, I know you very well. You've coached my son's team since under sixes.
Yeah.
And now he's 42. So you've got a long history there. I think what we're going to talk about today is all about looking at that nine-a-side format, and especially kind of how you took the players from seven-a-side into nine-a-side and what you learned from that journey. We've previously covered starting off at five-a-side and that transition from 5 to 7. We've never done 7 to 9, so it's going to be all around that, if that's okay.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And to be fair, this was, we're talking maybe you played 11-a-side for the whole season last season, so we're going back at least 1 year to when you last played 9-a-side, and obviously when you started 9-a-side, we're going back at least 3 years now. So recognising that, but you've had a bit of time to look at the questions and hopefully have a think about things, so it won't be too far in your memory that you can pick some of these things out. But I think it'd be useful to get your views on things, what worked, what didn't work, and if you do it again, what you might do differently or what you would definitely keep.
Yeah.
Sound all right?
Sounds great.
All right.
Sounds great.
And this is your second episode.
It is. Yeah. The first one must have been. It was definitely pre-COVID.
Episode 8.
Wow.
Yeah, a long time back. So this should be about 86, I think, this episode. So yeah, episode 8, back at the very beginning. So thank you for coming back on again.
Thank you for inviting me.
Took you a while to get back on again. We've been trying to do this one for a while, but
yes.
Finally we've done it. Brilliant. Let's not even worry about episode 8. Let's start almost from the beginning if you can. So a little bit about yourself and your coaching journey, I guess particularly around kind of the foundation phase and what you've been doing with the club you're at now.
Yeah. Blimey, how long have I been involved with the club? I think it must be 11 years now. So I started with my older son, who's not far off 17. Started with him at under sixes. And I'm not going to lie, I hadn't really considered a career in coaching before that point, but I'm probably not the type of person who can stand back or sit back and keep quiet on the sidelines either. But as it happens, they were looking for a coach, and I was press ganged into it a little bit. But
the last one step back.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I started with him, and I started to. At first, actually, when I first started, I was still playing Saturday football, and so I was trying to balance the two, and that was training on a Saturday morning, then I'd go off to play on a Saturday afternoon, and then I'd turn up on a Sunday morning very sore and limping probably, and coach the team as well. And at first I wasn't, I'd say I treated it as more of a hobby, and I was helping out, and the more I did it, the more I really started to find my feet and get into it. And when my younger son, when he started to play, and there was a need for a coach for his team, I moved to that one then, and started to coach my younger son, and that was, as you say, under sixes, and they're about to go into under 14s. So it feels like a bit of a blur that long ago. It's gone very fast.
Time go? It goes so fast.
Absolutely. In the meantime, I've done a couple of other things. So I coach now at Brentford's Performance Centre on a Wednesday evening. My son and a couple of boys who are in our grassroots team, they train with Brentford's Performance Centre, and it's nice to see them in a different environment than I normally see them at the weekends. And I think they certainly benefit from a different environment that they're playing in as well, not just their grassroots team. So I always think it's good for boys to, particularly boys who have their dads as their coach, to get a bit of coaching, or even just to go into a different environment as well. And so they've flourished with that. And I've done that for probably 3 years, I think, although it's been interrupted a bit by COVID. And yeah, it's led me to this point now with moving into under-14s with the boys. So I'm looking at 3 seasons before they go off and potentially find under-18s football. And yeah, it's a blur, without doubt.
I think one of the reasons the podcast exists is because a lot of coaches only get the opportunity to do the journey once, right? You know, you often pick up with your child, and you usually maybe stay with that process as long as you can stay and keep your sanity. And what we try to do with the podcast is help people on the journey. You know, that can only get one opportunity to try and get it right first time the best they can. That's a sharing experience. So I'm confident that, for 2 reasons. Obviously, having gone the route through with your older boys team, and now obviously with the younger boys team, that would be fantastic. But also looking back and reflecting on that journey, you'll be able to sort of share your thoughts and, you know, on things that did work for you and what you might do differently. Recognising everyone's environment's a bit different, right? Every club's a bit different,
Absolutely.
Every team's a bit different. Yeah. But I'm sure there'll be lots in there. But always the best place to start, I think, so coaches who are listening can kind of position themselves against where you might see things. Just a bit about kind of your coaching philosophy, like, you know, how you view coaching, what's important to you. You know, roughly what you want out of a session in a team. You know, just a feel about what's your values with regards to coaching.
Yeah, I think so. For me, the biggest thing I want from boys, in, you know, at 6, 7 years old up to 15, 16 years old, is just a level of focus. So when they turn up to train, they train well, and you know, you don't want to be the coach who stood in front of a group of 6 or 7 year olds shouting focus, focus. You know, but I think just I like to have boys who want to come to learn and want to come to enjoy their football and want to play football. And I think I struck lucky with the team, the vast majority of the team that we have. I think the vast majority of boys have, from that age, 6 or 7 years old, turn up and they enjoy their football and they want to play their football. And that's the main thing at the younger ages, is keeping it enjoyable for them. Because if they are enjoying it, then actually they will be concentrating and focused on what they're doing. As of course, as they go through, you know, the different age groups, and they get into under 14 now, so there's a little bit of teenage.
Starting to see that now, are you?
Yeah, creeping in. Yeah, absolutely. But I think in general, you know, you have to try and find ways to maintain that sort of level of wanting to be competitive and wanting to come and train well and wanting to come and enjoy themselves and enjoy their football. And it's, if you can balance those 3 things, and I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying I get it right all the time, but if you can balance those things, then I think that you will end up with pretty focused and committed boys who understand when they come to training that they're going to work hard, but actually will keep it fun. They'll enjoy themselves as well, and actually after training, give them a bit of time to have fun with their mates. So, for example, when we're packing up, then do you know what? Then they can go and be silly. Then they can go and smash balls into the goal. Then they can have a wrestle on the floor or whatever they want to do. And that's, I think, the key thing for me is having boys who just want to come and enjoy themselves, enjoy their football, but work hard as well.
And you've seen now, obviously, the kids from 6 up to like under 13s now going to under 14s. Does that change? Like, does it really change? 'Cause I think a lot of young coaches that coach younger age groups think actually as they get through the age groups, I've got to reinvent myself and become a lot more maybe, you know, firmer about stuff because they're older. But actually, don't the boys just want to come and have fun and, you know, focus anyway, whether they're under 6s or under 15s? Is that kind of consistent?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you don't keep a level of enjoyment in it, and if you don't keep a level of fun for the boys, then they're just not going to come. And actually, they might keep coming for a while, but sooner or later they're going to drop out of football. You have to keep it enjoyable, and you have to keep it fun. And I think it's different for different boys. I think different boys find fun in coming and actually being the hardest working player there, being the most competitive player there. You know, we've got 1 or 2 boys who I think they take great fun out of being able to go in for a big tough challenge. They'll take great fun in knocking someone off the ball. I think there are others that will take their fun and enjoyment from hitting a 30. Well, who wouldn't hit, take fun and enjoyment from hitting a 30-yard strike into the top
Never
corner.
done one, wouldn't know. It sounds like fun though.
I'm taking their word for it. Some boys want to come and just be on the ball the whole time, dribble around as many players as possible. So you have to try and again, I keep using this word, but balance. You have to try and find a balance where they can do the things that they enjoy, but actually they need to work on the things that they need to improve on as well.
It's a great point you make around fun, because we all say, we want to make sure that it's fun for the players. And I do think we forget sometimes that actually what fun means for one player is different to another player, isn't it? And actually,
Absolutely.
if it's just our version of fun as the coach, we may be missing off players on either end of that spectrum that don't see that as fun and come for different reasons. So it's a great point. All right, fantastic. So I really am going to stretch your memory now. Bear in mind, I can't think of what I did yesterday, let alone 7 years ago.
This will be a challenge.
But really, before you look at a 9-a-side and kind of all the things that went on there, it's probably good to have a little flashback to 7-a-side. Not to go all about 7-a-side, but just I wonder what you kind of did at 7-a-side and what you had in place maybe that you thought might be useful for 9-a-side, and we can reflect back on them if it was or not later on. But if you came at 7-a-side, kind of what were you doing then, and what things might have you had that you could have transitioned to 9-a-side?
So at 7-a-side, I was very structured in how we approached training and games particularly. So every boy knew it would be full rotation, it would be equal game time, and I'd produce a plan that I would send out to the parents on a Saturday that would say, right, this boy is playing this position, he's playing between these minutes, then for example he's going to come off, then he's going to come back on in this position, and I literally worked it by boy. And I'm really glad I did it, actually. I'm really, really glad I did it. The same boy could play at the back and up front one week. The next week he might play left midfield, and actually he might play in goal as well. So we brought our goalkeeper onto the pitch. So it was very structured. To support them, I've always wanted to try and, as much as I want to develop their technique and ability on the ball, I've always wanted to develop their brain and their thought process into the game equally. And so produce for them player development cards, so actually looking at individual things that they can work on and handing them out to them and asking the parents to work alongside them. Look, so you'll remember with your own son, I can't remember the things that were on his card now, if I'm perfectly honest, but talk to your dad.
About 30 things on his card.
No,
I remember that, 3 or 4 things. I think you highlighted a couple of super strengths, and if I remember right, there's a few things and super strengths and some areas kind of to focus on and get working on.
Yeah. And talk to your dad and get the parents buy-in, and actually, can you spend 20 minutes with them in the garden a couple of times a week and work on these things? Then I did positional cards as well. So actually, if you go and play in a particular position, all I'm looking for you to do is 3 or 4 things. That's all I'm looking. I'm not asking you to be equally as brilliant at left back as you are at right midfield, for example, but what I want you to do is focus on these few things when you're in this position. And actually, when we moved into 9-a-side, of course, it becomes slightly different. There's more space on the pitch, particularly when they first, like little ants running around on a table. It was, it seemed so odd to look at these little lads who you'd seen from 5 years old running around on a big pitch. But the idea was that they would understand more that the different positions that they play, the jobs that they needed to do. And I think 9-a-side brought different challenges, obviously, to 7-a-side. But the idea was, if I can develop their thinking around the game, even at a basic level, even for young lads at 10, 11 years old, then actually it will benefit them once they transition, not just through 7 to 9, but actually through 9 to 11, I guess, as well.
So I remember the positional cards and the player development cards. So looking back now, what I don't remember is whether or not they were specific for the player at that moment in time, or whether you were thinking about, okay, the things they needed, but also how that would develop them either in the position they were going to play in or them individually for 9-a-side football. So did you have 9-a-side, or was it a case of we're looking at the here and now and didn't worry too much about 9-a-side, or were you thinking about 9-a-side at that time? It's okay if you weren't, but I just... Yeah, no,
the positional cards were definitely transferable. So it didn't talk around, I think at 7-a-side, I think we played 2 at the back with 3 in the midfield and 1 up front. But I literally kept everything as defence, midfield, attack. So when we went to 9-a-side, I toyed around with a couple of different formations, but actually they knew as a defender, as a midfielder, as an attacker, these are my these are my jobs.
Key responsibility.
So it was definitely transferable, yeah. In terms of the player development cards, I think they were maybe more a moment in time. When I say a moment in time, I might be thinking of the things that they needed to work on the most at that point. So I like to think that we've seen certain successes in certain boys as well. Maybe whether it's over the last 12 months, it's difficult to judge further back because for 18 months football was so interrupted because of COVID.
Fair point.
You don't know. I don't really know how much success I'd have had, or whether I'd have seen any of the boys grow and develop at a faster rate if we hadn't had COVID. But you probably think that they would have. But yeah, so but certainly the positional stuff, I just wanted them to understand at a high level and at a general level, because these were 10-year-old, 11-year-old boys. You don't want to go into too much specifics, but what is the job of a defender? To understand danger, recognise danger. What is the job of a midfielder? To appreciate space, to move into space. What is the job of a forward? To understand opportunities. How can I move defenders around? How can I create space for someone else? And it was sort of high level like that, really.
And did you have an overarching kind of playing philosophy at 7-a-side? Or did you have one, I guess? And if you did have one, was it one that you shared with the players, or was it one you kind of had in your own head that you kind of just would kind of try and nurture out through training and matches? And then if you did have one, how would that line against 9-a-side? Did it evolve on from that, or did you reinvent the wheel at 9-a-side because it was just different?
No, it transferred through 7 and 9-a-side, and I wanted us to dominate possession, to be comfortable on the ball, and effectively to move the opposition and tie the opposition around so much, because effectively they couldn't get the ball, and we'd create opportunities like that. And particularly the last season of 7-a-side and the first season of 9-a-side, that worked really well for us, and we dominated games. I remember us losing a game once 5-1, and we must have had 65-70% of the ball. Now, of course, we didn't use it as well as the other team when they had it, because they scored 5 and we scored 1. But my philosophy was, without a shadow of a doubt, to dominate the ball. And at 7-a-side, I look back now, and I'm not sure if this was the right thing, and you'll remember this, but I banned us from putting the ball in the air. I banned us from delivering corners and set pieces and free kicks. Everything had to be on the floor. The goalkeeper played out from the back. Set pieces, free kicks, unless it was in a shooting position, had to be played on the floor. Everything was to ensure that the boys had the maximum amount of touches of the football as possible, and that transferred into the first season of 9-a-side. And I think in the 2 seasons that we played 9-a-side, albeit COVID interrupted, we only lost 3 games. Now, there were certain games that, don't get me wrong, you come up against good sides, and you might remember us having a 3-3 draw once, and us holding on for dear life at the end, that type of thing. So it's not like we weren't, or that we were battering everyone in front of us. It wasn't the case, but I certainly had more comments than I expected from other coaches, as if to say, we really like the way that you play football, etc. So that was certainly the philosophy and the principles that we played with at that age. Yeah,
I think that's great, because also then if you're going to do positional cards and things like player development kind of tips and guidance, if it aligns in with something more holistic, then you've got more chance of all joining together, right? And that's the important thing.
Absolutely. And the player development cards and the positional cards and the philosophy and even the formation, I always maybe overthought it really for 7 and 9-a-side football. I always wanted to set them up in a way I thought that they could maximise what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
So, what's the point in me trying to play very possession-based, fast football if at 7-a-side I'm going to play 3 at the back? It just didn't work.
Question for you, because I'm thinking aloud now, because I did remember now that you said it about the fact that the boys were certainly encouraged, if not told, short corners, ball on the floor, don't kick it out, which I think everyone would probably agree is great, in the sense of better than the alternative is just go think long, definitely. So devil's advocate, benefit of hindsight, rather than it being a must, would you do it now as a rather, let's try and do that first as plan A, but actually if you want to think in a moment and do something different, then that's okay too.
Yeah, yes, potentially I was too strict with it. I do think it did benefit the boys. I really do. But if you're asking, did I take away a little of the free thinking and the ability for them to make decisions in the moment? Yeah, I probably did. What I think I might do is, if I had my time again, is have that structure and strictness in place earlier, maybe for one season. And if I'm, thinking off the top of my head, I might say I would do that in the second season of 5-a-side, for example.
Yeah.
And then when we got to 7-a-side, then actually, lads, okay, we still want to keep the same principles, but now you have a little bit more license. If you think there's an opportunity where you can try something and do something differently, then you have that license to do so. So potentially yes, but on the flip side, there was a definite benefit as well, I think.
It's definitely a juggling act, right? And it is a balance. You kind of weigh up all these things around, okay, autonomy over kind of, giving them free rein and stuff and getting the balance right. And I certainly think that, if you're going to have to lean towards one, it's more about, right, stay on the ball, try and do the right thing, rather than sometimes we see just coaches actually encouraging the opposite, kick it long and everything goes direct. So, brilliant. Okay, we'll come on to formations and matches a bit in a minute, if that's all right, because that's definitely part of what we want to cover here. But now, if we move on now then, right into 9-a-side, so you got the players, it's 9-a-side now. What does training look like at 9-a-side, and how does it, if at all, differ from 7-a-side?
I think at 9-a-side, training became a lot more game-based. In fact, mostly game-based, if I'm honest. I always liked having small-sided games in tight spaces. I always thought that if boys are able to find space and move the ball quickly in tight spaces, then actually when they get onto bigger pitches, then it will just feel a lot easier. So a lot of training became games-based, and it became there'd be a different theme around it. Okay, so for example, it might be a keep ball. It might also be a transitional game. For example, I remember I used to split the pitch into thirds, and again theme the game differently. And when I first started to coach at Brentford, I had a couple of the boys. I went to do a session and I started to split the pitch into thirds, and another lad from another club said, "What are you doing?" And one of our lads went, "Oh, he always does this." But I like that. I like the idea of us.
Did he say it as like, "Oh, he always does this," or was that, "No, he always does this"?
Oh, absolutely the former. But I just think it gave me at the time, and the things I was trying to work on with the boys, whether that be playing out from the back and breaking lines, whether again that be in the transition, whether again that would actually be positional as well, because you could do some really good positional stuff within thirds like that. Then I used to do a lot around that stuff, and a typical training session would look like the boys would turn up, I'd have mini goals out, we might have a couple of 4v4s going on, for example, if we had the numbers, a couple of 3v3s, whatever it would be, and then it would move into as I say, a themed game. So let's say for argument's sake it was a game where you might have again the pitch split into thirds, and you might have one man in each third who actually played for both teams, but the objective of the game for the boys in the middle was to work the ball to the man at the end. Once they got it to the man at the end, they turned it round and they had to work it to the man at the other end. Okay, so you're working on possession, but possession with a purpose, and you'd rotate the boys at the end as well to make sure that they had an equal amount of time in the middle third too. So I'm a big fan of those type of games, and I think again, if you think of what you're trying to work on, you can use those smaller games, or you can manipulate them to try and work on a variety of different things as well. And then what we would do is we'd try and take that into a big game at the end. So that would be a game where standard size football pitch, we might play again, depending on the numbers, we had say a 7-a-side. Right lads, we've worked on X today, or we've worked on moving the ball quickly. Let's see if we can take it into a bigger game now, and let's see how we get on there. And one thing that I have had numerous conversations with other coaches around is the use of limited touch games as well. So that might be 3-touch, 4-touch. Personally, I'm a fan of it. I know there are many coaches who aren't. What I would say is I've never been a fan of it before 9-a-side. But I think at 11, 12, 13 years old, I think you can start to use it tactically, maybe scarcely as well. But if your philosophy, as mine was to move the ball quickly and keep the ball moving between your team, then actually it can play a role. I think you have to treat it with, or you have to do it in the right manner. It's not something you would want to do for the whole training session. But so that's what a typical nine-a-side session would look like. And then we'd have some sort of antics at the end where they'd have a penalty shootout and I'd be in goal. Something along those lines.
And did you have a syllabus? So like a syllabus, as I mean, like, would you have maybe a plan over a season or a term or something where you'd be working on certain things, or were you more like, let's just see what we need this week?
I certainly listen. I'm certainly not organised enough to have a syllabus over the course of a season. That's for sure.
I didn't want to say that first, but
but I guess, look, I knew how I, not just then, but now as well, as you'll know, I know how I want us to play. I know how I have a vision of how I want the boys to play. I know what I think. I know what perfection looks like for this team, and so I would base training around. It would be a balance of working on our principles and keep reiterating and making sure that the message got through as to how we play. But there would be some occasions where potentially we've had a game and I've felt something that hasn't worked particularly well, or I've felt that there was an area that we might need more improvement from. So I have had games in the past where I've had a goalkeeper in goal, and on the halfway line I've had 3 mini goals, and it's been an attack v defence type of game, and it was effectively used to help us play out from the back. The goalkeeper, everything started from the goalkeeper. We played from the back. The objective was you had 4 defenders and a couple of midfielders, and they had to work the ball into the mini goals. And that might be that they're working it from the centre halves into the midfielders, and your fullbacks get high or overlap, and you can move it forward like that. But then the attackers, for them, their focus will be around pressing. So when teams play out the back against us, go and press the ball, go and win the ball, go and win the ball high up the pitch. I would use that tactically if I felt that particular parts of our game hadn't been working for us. I think the key thing there is to have a plan, know where you're trying to get to, but being able to, I guess, identify areas of it that need to be worked on more and being flexible with, being able to do that.
Makes sense. I think 2 big changes from 7 to 9 aside, obviously in England for foundation phase players, is the offside rule and no retreat line. Either or all of those things, were they things you focused on, worried about, or worked on specifically? And if so, how did you go about that? Let's do the offside first. Was the offside something that was in your head, and did you work on it? I don't remember. I mean, I don't know if I didn't see it. I don't remember you specifically kind of doing stuff around it necessarily, but maybe I missed it. Was it a thing?
You didn't miss it.
Right. Okay.
I didn't really do an awful lot about it, to be honest, because I kind of feel that I approached it to it. It's not as if I didn't do a single thing. We spoke about it, lads. Do you understand what offside means? And I had the tactics board. Is this offside, lads? If this, would this be offside, lads? And they'll sort of look at it and go, yeah, no, and you'd maybe correct them, or you'd say yes, absolutely. What if this man moved here, lads? Was he offside then? And I probably spent, honestly, Scott, maybe half an hour over the course of 3 sessions.
Because they knew it. They knew what it meant, and they kind of roughly had an idea about what they need to do around it.
But it all came into when we transitioned and we played lots of friendlies. I would literally stand. I mean, I like to stand in line with my back four. I have no idea why I do that. I like to stand in line with my back four. But I just talk to them. Lads, you need to move up. Lads, push out. And ask them questions. Are you playing them onside? Is that boy offside? And it was as simple as that, really. And I didn't want to get... I was conscious that I didn't want to have sessions where today, lads, we're going to focus on offside, and I'd play numerous drills. Go back to the enjoyment piece. You know, I don't know any boy who's turned up for training and gone, James, today can we really work on offsides? Yeah. You know, so
different versions of fun.
Well, this is true, yeah. But yeah, we just integrated it as to part of the game. So yeah, we had a chat about it, and then when we had friendlies, we spoke about it. And going back, Scott, to the player development cards, the positional development cards, and understanding your job. Well, actually, when it got to 9-a-side, your job as a defender, and this was very high level. You've got to remember you're dealing with grassroots football, grassroots linesmen and referees. So we don't have VAR, for example. But lads, it's simple. If the ball goes in their half, you get out. If it comes in our half, drop off a little bit. You know, we're not coaching the Arsenal back four from the late 80s here.
No.
So I try to keep it quite simple for them. But you see in our team now, just over time, they're pretty good at that stuff.
Yeah.
That, you know, no one is 20 yards behind the rest of the defence getting out.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. And I think the no retreat thing, I'm going to guess maybe that was the defence versus attack stuff you were doing. I remember a lot of that stuff and playing for the back and using the goalkeeper. So well, let's talk about that actually. How did you manage the no retreat line, and how did that impact on how you used the goalkeeper?
To be honest, it didn't change. So from the last season of 7-a-side into the first season of 9-a-side, it didn't change how we used the goalkeeper, really. We still played out, at that point we were still playing out from the back. I guess the difference with the no retreat, I can remember playing friendlies and games at 7-a-side and asking coaches not to retreat against us. And I don't know if you can remember that, but it was non-competitive or no league tables at the time, but I would literally say, please don't play retreat against us, press our boys. And it cost us goals at times, without a shadow of a doubt. And
that was the second season of 7-a-side before you're going to move to 9-a-side?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly when we had friendlies, and I was playing 9-a-side friendlies before the end of the 7-a-side season from memory. Not loads, but some.
Yeah.
I for me it was just full on immersion. Lads, we've had a couple of seasons of playing nice football out of the back, but knowing that actually from the goalkeeper you've got a few seconds before 5-10 seconds, whatever, before you're going to be under pressure. But asking other coaches not to retreat, lads, you've got 2 seconds. Deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, how are you going to solve that problem, lads? And I think it was beneficial to them. And I'm not sure I was ever a huge fan of the retreat line at 7-a-side anyway. Maybe I'm trying to think back now. It does feel like a lifetime ago. But I would certainly say if there's coaches out there who are looking to how to manage that, I would say just throw the lads in at the deep end and you'd be surprised at the response that you get.
We're going to do top tips a bit later on, but that would be one I think was fantastic. Even if you just said at 7-a-side, second season, one player from position can press. That's something just to introduce the idea of being pressed from kickoff. So you've got at least one up there that's involved, and I think that's a great way to introduce the fact that you're going to play under pressure a little bit. So,
and I do get it. I remember going back to 5-a-side where, as you'll know, the team that I coach, we aren't a big team. We aren't a hugely physical team. We don't have lads, or we certainly didn't at 5-a-side, who could kick the ball.
We don't now,
20, 30 years. Well, not really, no. But
we've always got the smallest team. What's that about?
I don't know. I've no idea. Actually, no, I'm lying. I do have an idea because I had I always had a thing in my head that my favourite type of player was a small but really quick and really technical type of player. They're the type. It wasn't
Barcelona.
Just I love a small, quick, technical, sharp, focused type of player. Right.
Being a small, quick, fast, technical type of guy yourself.
I mean, I'll take that all day. Lots of people would say different, but and so I had these boys naturally come into our team. The one or two that we've added because of again moving from 5s to 7s to 9s to getting a bigger squad. I think I've actually brought boys in who are mostly of the same build, makeup, stature. But of course we're at 11-a-side now and we're going to under 14. So actually sometimes we turn them, I'm thinking I wouldn't want to play against these boys myself.
Some giants out
huge.
There, isn't there? Yeah.
So, but yeah, I do think going back to the point around 5-a-side, I understand the retreat rule there. There were games where we couldn't get out of our penalty box. We were just pressed in.
Yeah. Because the physicality of the team more than anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I also think it's benefited us because once we got to 7-a-side and 9-a-side, we could play around teams.
Yeah. That long-term vision.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, James. Excellent. Okay, well, let's move on to look at matches then specifically, because obviously that's the biggest change, I guess, like in all the formats when you transition each couple of years. How did matches differ at 9-a-side compared to 7-a-side? And things like, your formations would be a good thing to find out how you went about that and what you chose, whether you picked one or you looked at a few different things, like the pitch size, how you rotated players. You mentioned before about obviously having that kind of fixed plan. how you manage things like your position in game time and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, great question.
Massive question.
Yeah, massive question. I could probably talk about this. We'll be here till tomorrow.
I'll sit back with my beer now and you can just chat away.
In terms of game time, we moved planned from set game time to, or equal game time I should say, to minimum game time. So I think for a 50-minute game, boys in the first year of nine-a-side were guaranteed 35 minutes. When we moved to an hour, they were guaranteed 40 minutes. I think I've got my game times right there, but so I wanted to put more of an emphasis on the boys that game time is to be earned, because let's face it, that's football, but also guaranteeing that they would have a minimum level of game time so that they had enough time on the pitch to support their development, right? So maybe a little kidology with the boys, lads. The longer you want to stay on the pitch, the harder you work, the more impact you have, the longer you'll stay on the pitch. But obviously knowing that actually that I would guarantee that they had a minimum. And we spoke to the parents about it, and took the parents to the pub to tell them the plan, and there didn't seem to be much pushback to that idea, to be honest. But
not in the pub.
Not in the pub, no.
Right at the end.
Yeah, very, very much at the end of a long evening. But all the parents bought into it, and so from a game time perspective, that worked well. And
yep.
I think I'm lucky to have the boys that I have, but it was never really an issue where I had to say to one boy, well, you're only going to get the minimum game time because you're not turning up with the necessary tools. It just that never happened. In terms of formation,
yeah, that's a big one, right? Because
it's a big one.
Yeah. How do you approach that whole thing? So you said, I think at
Badly,
7-a-side. Yeah, well, but it's never easy, right? It's not rocket science. It's not a science behind it. You've kind of got to go through the process. But I think you said at 7-a-side, the general formation was probably like the keeper, 2 back players, 3 midfield players, and a front player.
Yeah.
So then, was that picked with 9-a-side in mind? Was that's right for us 7-a-side, so we didn't really think about 9-a-side at that point, or was there a plan to whack in 2 players somewhere to add on to that formation? Or were you more fluid with different formations for different teams, or we'll see how it goes?
So no, I'll be honest. When at 7-a-side, I didn't really have a 9-a-side formation in my mind as much. When I selected the 2-3-1, it wasn't thinking further in the future. It was what benefited us and allowed us to play the football that we wanted to play the best at 7-a-side. And honestly, I think my advice would be, don't get too carried away with. It's always good to forward plan, but concentrate in the here and now more. Think about how you want to play football and set your team up like that. And that's what I did with 7-a-side. But I always thought that when I went to 9-a-side, I'd play 3 at the back. So playing a back 4 when you've got 8 outfield players, having half your players in your defence just seemed daft to me. So when we started, we played in 9-a-side, I went to a 3-4-1 formation. So you could argue that actually I've built on the 2-3-1. But what I found, if I'm honest, is within 4 or 5 games, I just didn't like it. I didn't like a 3-4-1 for a number of reasons. I felt that there was too much space in areas I didn't want space, particularly behind the midfield, in what you would technically call the full-back areas. And I just never felt that we found space on the pitch. I always felt our centre forward was isolated, and so I changed it, and I went to a back 4, and in the end I played 4 with a diamond, and what I did there was have my wing backs really high. So for a lot of the time I was playing 2 at the back, and the lad at the base of the diamond could fill in. Now I was lucky. I've got 2 boys in my team that you'll know well who are very, very athletic, very fit, can get around the pitch, and actually aren't afraid of a tackle either. So having both those boys at the base of the diamond worked well. You'll also know the fullbacks that I had at 9-a-side in my own son and Oliver, and they're boys who really like to get forward. Zach would be another who played at fullback a lot as well. They really like to get forward. But these are athletic lads, and they can get back as well. So it benefited us, and I think we found a rhythm. I think we found a better way of playing in that formation. I think we also, given the lads I had who who like to get forward, the attacking players. I could move them around quite freely into any of the front three positions, and they all did very well there, and they supported each other and they played well together. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were games when it didn't quite happen for us, and as I say, I mentioned earlier our opening game of 9-a-side, we got spanked 5-1, but I found, and this is what I would say about formations, you know, I know coaches who will get hung up on formations and are Googling what's the best formation for particular football format. I think you've got to know your players, you've got to know what they're good at and how they want to play. You've got to know what your principles are and how you want to play, and actually your formation will fall quite quickly out of that.
For sure.
So, you know, I as I say, with 3 at the back, I probably tried to engineer a formation that didn't suit 9-a-side and didn't suit the boys that I had, and so being able to be flexible and adapt, it suited us. You know, we did well at 9-a-side. We won the second season, we won the league, albeit a COVID interrupted one, and the first season, as I say, I think we only lost a couple of games. So it seemed to work for us. Rotation wise, I still kept the level of rotation as well. So going into 9-a-side, it, as I say, it wasn't the fixed plan that I'd had before, where every boy will play every position on a rotational basis, but every boy would have a minimum of 2 and potentially 3 positions that they would play. So if I looked at your lad, he would play a lot at centre half, but he also played quite regularly in the midfield positions as well. One of, you know, or anywhere around that diamond, I should say.
Yep.
So it was important to keep that level of rotation too. So that's a very long answer to quite a long question, but I hope it made sense.
It did make sense. Back on the formations then. So obviously you've gone in there, you're thinking like 3-4-1's the one I want to play. I think it looks right on paper. It all adds up. We've all been there when we've done the paper version, then the reality plays out. It's not quite the same. So then you think, okay, let's try this, make a 4-1-2-1 essentially. But what I like about what you said is actually, although it's a 4-1-2-1, it's quite fluid in the moment. So when you encourage the fullbacks to push on, suddenly it becomes either a 2-1-4-1 or it becomes a 2-3-2-1, depending on where the fullbacks are, right? Yeah. In the system. So again, if you were doing it again, or if you were giving some advice for what it's worth to coaches that are in this situation, maybe the transition from 7 to 9-a-side over this summer, would you encourage them to have one formation, have a fluid formation, have different formations depending on opponents or player availability? I guess what I'm trying to lead you down is having one formation the right answer, or should you be more flexible in your approach around formations?
For me, I can't give you a straight yes or no answer, to be honest. For me, I think it depends. I think you have to know your boys and your players, know what their strengths are, know what they need to improve at as well, and maybe know their characters a bit too. You know, characters a huge thing, even in kids, and we spend a lot of time, as you know, trying to develop the characters of our boys, their resilience, their confidence, all this type of stuff. So I think you have to know where you'll get the best out of boys, where you think you need to stretch and challenge them, but ultimately going back to just keeping it enjoyable for them as well. If someone has no desire, no intention, and no real, or is miserable if you play him at left back, you know, every other game, don't play him at left back every other game. Maybe play him at left back for 20 minutes in a game, just so they get an understanding of it. But you know, you again, it's a balancing act. But I think, just going back to your question, I like the idea of, once you have a set formation, then making that brilliant and making the boys brilliant at it within it. Personally, I understand why you might be flexible. You know, you might have all of a sudden a boy who's crucial to that formation may get injured, and what do you do? Yeah. But if you've done it properly, then another boy just comes in and does that job because they understand the job that they've got to do.
It's a good point. You know, whatever you do, just do it right, I guess, isn't it? Like, if you're going to be fluid and have different formations, that's fine. Just make it work. If you can have one, then make that the best one you can make it work. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay, surprises. So I think one of the things we learn as grassroots coaches as we go through the journey is life's full of surprises, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
You think you got it, and suddenly there's a wow that comes from somewhere. So, in the hope of trying to take some of those surprises away from those coaches that are, on the curve and about to go into nine-a-side, what surprised you most about nine-a-side? And particularly kind of, the format, opposition, the game. Do you look back and think, actually, no, we were bang on prepared for it and it was all great, or actually, do you know what, that surprised me a little bit and therefore maybe I would do this differently next time?
I think in terms of surprises, what surprised me the most, and I'm going to look at this from purely from the coach's perspective here, is I don't think I ever fully got to grips with nine-a-side. I never felt satisfied in, even though I've spoken about formation and how I set the team up, and I think it was the best for us at the time, I still never felt it was brilliant. I still never felt, at seven-a-side, honestly, when we played that 2-3-1, I felt every game that we went out at seven-a-side, the boys were primed for that formation and ready to go. And even though, as I say, after a while I landed on a formation at nine-a-side, it never felt as comfortable to me. And that, I think, is down more to me as a coach. When I look back now, what I would say is, actually, did it have to be 100% perfect? It probably didn't. And I think I spent too much time concentrating on how I looked at it and how I approached it, and actually, rather than thinking, well, it's not perfect, but do you know what? Just get on with it and get the best you can from what you've got. I think so. So for me, as someone who has been involved in coaching a lot, but has been involved in football a lot, and I've always felt that I could at least get to a solution for various problems in football, and never felt completely satisfied with what I was doing at nine-a-side.
Was partly that because of the fact that the seven-a-side team or format had gone so well for that team, and you'd set yourself very high standards and expectations because the boys were great at seven-a-side? Was that part? It's harder, right? That's the idea, right? As you format through the game, it gets harder. And is that part of the issue, actually, that they were very good relatively, but they weren't maybe quite as good as you wanted them to be because they had been so good at seven-a-side?
Yeah, potentially there was an element of that. Potentially. I go back, the other thing I think, Scott, is we spoke about them being a small team, and actually boys started to have growth spurts at that point. Excuse me. And on a bigger pitch, I always felt that we probably couldn't compete as well physically as other teams at that point. And at the time, I used to think that, well, what can I do? Can I change the formation to make that a little bit easier? Can I change? Actually, maybe we need to stop playing out from the goalkeeper. Maybe we need to start going out wider, maybe, and further up the pitch. How do we get them up the pitch quicker? And I dwell on all these points, and it was silly, really, looking back. I think at nine-a-side I got too wrapped up in the, what is the right formation, or what is the right way to play, or what is the, rather than going back to what I just said previously, is that, like, actually know your boys, know what they're good at. And I did, as I say, I did get there eventually, but I found that was a big surprise for me in how I adapted to nine-a-side, probably more so than the boys.
And maybe a pet peeve of mine, wrongly, is the fact that we play opposition sometimes that are more encouraged to play long ball football. I've got no right in having a view on it because they're not my team, so I should learn to deal with that better and just accept the fact that's part of it all. How did you find that? Did you find teams started playing more or less long ball football against you, or was it the same as what you'd found at maybe 5 and 7-a-side? And as a consequence of that, did you have to do anything different with your team to deal with long ball football?
Yeah, I think there was an element of. I remember just playing a game, and the opposition had this boy up front, and he was really good, but he was lightning quick. And everything they did, every time they got the ball, they just punted it up to this lad. I think he had a field day against us. I think we lost 3-0, I think, from memory, and he scored all 3. It could have been 7-0, and he'd have scored all 7, to be honest. And that was the first time I remember thinking, I'm not a fan of that. That's not what it's about, really. Like
it's effective, right? But
it's effective, but effectively, you've got another 6 or 7 players on the pitch who weren't involved in the game, or when they weren't involved, all it was to do was try and get the ball off us when we had it, and so I didn't try and adapt to it. No, I just kept us doing what we did. And do you know what? If we lose against a team who want to pump the ball forward to a really fast attacking player, if we lose 3-0, but we stick to what we do, and actually, in that game we played some lovely football, we played some really good football. We played, it sounds daft because we lost it, we played the much better football. I can live with that.
Yeah,
I can live with it because we stuck to our principles and we stuck to what we'd been working on for over time. I think, don't forget, this was the first season of 9-a-side, and it was non-competitive, so I think the boys could live with that as well. Obviously they're disappointed when they lose games, of course they are, but I think there was a definite shift. I think, again, it goes back to, I suppose, that manager knew his team. He knew he had a player who was lightning quick. He chose to sacrifice the other players over getting the
development over results,
which I wouldn't do. So.
Yeah. Had you noticed was there more of it though? So I think once the retreat line goes and you're under pressure then to actually play out, or play football, a solution to not, if you can't play out football, then you maybe kick it long, which I do understand. Did you notice more of it on reflection, or did you not? Was it just it didn't become an issue? It was just one of those things that some teams did it, but most teams didn't.
If I'm honest, I don't remember thinking there's a huge shift here. This was maybe, as I say, this was pre-COVID, and I think playing out the back was a real bit of a trend, wasn't it, at the time?
It was a focus for most teams,
real
wasn't
focus
it?
and a trend.
It was the pep influence.
Absolutely. So most teams did it, and we did it, and so I don't remember there being a dramatic shift. I think maybe for coaches transitioning from 7 to 9-a-side now, then it might be more noticeable, potentially.
Fair point.
But honestly, I mean, just on that, and we're 11-a-side now with our team. I encourage my goalkeeper to play as much. I encourage him to be high up the pitch when the ball's in the opposition half, and we encourage our defenders to use the goalkeeper as a last defender and go and get the ball off him. But actually, from goal kicks, we rarely play out the back now. It's more around him. It's not a long kick. It's a clip. Can you clip it into someone in midfield? Can you clip it wide into your wider midfield players and play from there? So I think, again, it will differ by coach, I think, but back to your question, no, I don't remember a huge.
No, well, that's good. I think that's good. And good point to mention about the COVID situation, the fact that actually playing it back was a big thing back then, wasn't it? So maybe that was part of it all. I think we see it a lot more now, actually. We're seeing more teams, playing a bit more direct, but again, it's not.
I mean, this is your podcast, I shouldn't be asking the questions, but I'm going to ask one anyway. But obviously with your younger boy, who's now under 10s, do you see less playing out the back?
Yes, and more long ball football.
Versus like your older lad.
Yeah, and Ben, it's a very small sample of we're in one league in one area. So, but we've noticed definitely, and maybe it's a COVID thing. Maybe the fact that players have had this opportunity to get on the grass and practice. A solution now is okay. We'll go a bit more direct, and again, it's effective. So who am I to argue with it? Philosophically, I'm not aligned to that way of developing 8, 9, 10-year-olds, but again, there is development in it. It's just a different way of developing, I guess. But we've definitely seen more of it. But I don't remember it being an issue with the older boys' team. So, like you said, I don't remember thinking that. I think everyone was trying to play football, to be fair, and we did it better than most. There was the odd team that would go a bit more direct, like you say, the ones that maybe had a particularly fast or powerful centre forward. I remember actually one team not too long ago, with a big lad up front, which is a powerhouse going through us because it was just direct. Although I think we did give him a good game. So, and I don't remember it being an issue, and I don't remember the boys having to kind of deal with that or face any problems. I would imagine that maybe coaches now that are transitioning from 7 to 9, they may face more of that, because if you've got no retreat line and you've got to, you've got to find a solution to that. If your players you don't feel they're quite strong enough to be able to play around a press, then that is a solution, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely, and I was lucky in that I did have lads, like I said before, small technical lads, but they could play out the back. They were comfortable on the ball. I understand that there'll be coaches listening to this who are thinking, well, I maybe don't have those lads who are as comfortable. I don't have those lads who are as technical, and I think if I was going to say one thing, it's don't be tempted to just go for that big kick from the goalkeeper. Please, persevere with it. It might cost you goals. It might cost you matches. Who cares?
The big kick won't get them there, will it?
The big kick won't get them there. They won't get them any better.
Yeah.
Keep doing it. And you know what? Mix it up a little bit, actually. That, if you're playing with the retreat line, then, yeah, of course, play out to your defenders. But actually, if you're playing nine-a-side and you don't have a retreat line, use your goalkeeper, get him to draw the first press, and then try and play through the lines, get your midfielder in there. And it sounds all technical and tactical. It's not. It's really simple stuff. It's like, instead of passing to him, pass to him instead. And but don't sacrifice and become one of these coaches who are hell-bent on winning a game by smashing the ball forward to the quick lad or the big lad up front.
So you've done a few already in the podcast, but if you had to give some top tips to those coaches that were transitioning from 7 to 9 aside, looking back now on reflection, if you had to pick a few things you say, actually, I would definitely do that, or I did this and it worked, what might some of those tips be?
What I found from 7 to 9 aside is you can really get the lads thinking more about the game now in terms of how a proper format of football looks, so i.e. 11 aside, right? So I started to focus. I've always focused on the trying to make them aware of the game. And I used to say to them, lads, what do we play football with? And they'd all say, let me rephrase that. Lads, what part of our body do we play football with? And at first he'd say our feet, and I'd say, no, we play with our brain. And that at 5 aside and 7 aside they kind of got. But I really started to ramp up.
I heard you that under 6 is saying that.
Yeah.
Used to say that to
absolutely.
The boys.
I've always the thinking player. For me, the thinking player beats the technical player. No question. And really start to try and knuckle down on that awareness, appreciating space when you're in possession, appreciating space, appreciating where to run, appreciating when to drop off to receive the ball, appreciating when to use your goalkeeper, appreciating how to get the ball forward quickly. I think, out of possession, appreciating where the danger is, appreciating where you need to tuck in, nullifying space, or whatever it would be. I think 9 aside is a really good starting, really good platform for them to understand the game in its purest form. I get as 11 aside. The other one would be I've lost my train of thought here.
So top tips. So obviously focus on that kind of the players really think about actually being thinking players.
Yeah.
And using game intelligence, which is now probably more important even than technical ability.
Yeah.
What other top tips might?
And I think I mentioned this earlier, but I spent too much time fretting about how I set them up, and how I, what formation should I play and what's the right thing to do here in terms of how do we deal with various challenges that come in at 9 aside. Actually, it's a bit of a nonsense. Forget what you're thinking. Just concentrate on what's the right thing for the boys. Know your team, know your players, set them up, and then just let them play. In terms of transitions, 7 to 9 felt like a bigger transition for me than 5 to 7, or actually 9 to 11. 7 to 9 felt the biggest transition, and I'd go back to my earlier point around the thinking footballer. I think at 7 to 9 as well, there's different things like you say, there's no retreat line and offside comes in. But again, don't spend too much time fretting about offside. Don't overthink
football,
it.
right?
Just let them play. Yeah. And it'll get there.
And you did mention earlier about parent involvement. How important is that, and how did you approach that? Because obviously you've had the players since under 6s, but let's focus on the 7 to 9 transition. How much did you involve those in that transition, individually or collectively? And is that something that you'd recommend other coaches to do?
Parents.
Yeah.
Absolutely involve them. As a coach, whether it was 7 to 9 aside or speaking more broadly, absolute transparency. Tell them what you're going to do. Explain why you're going to do it, and then do it. So, when I went down the route of absolute maximum rotation and equal game time, I think I probably had 1 or 2 parents at that time who wanted a particular boy to play in a particular position more often than not. But when I explained why I was doing it, then I seemed to get the buy-in. I think I had the buy-in from the group at the time. We lost 1 boy at 7 aside. I remember but I think that was because they wanted to go to a team where that boy would potentially be the main man.
Philosophically, they're differently aligned to what you wanted.
Differently aligned, yeah.
It happens, right?
We're being very polite here, aren't we? But
yes,
that happens, and I was happy with that. If actually you didn't think that what I was doing was the right thing, then maybe another team is the right place for you. 9-a-side, moving on to minimum game time and actually having boys being able to adapt to 2 or 3 positions within a framework. Again, lots of transparency. And fine, parents bought into it, and I'm lucky we've got a really good group of parents as well within our team. So that would be from a point of view of how you want to go about managing game time, rotations, all those things that will come into a game day. Transparency with the parents, get the buy-in, make them understand why you're doing it, and I don't think you'll have a problem.
Recruitment, obviously one of the things that every transitional year coaches face is adding players to their squad, right? That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And part of that will be how the club's set up and their own internal policies, which is totally understandable. How did you find recruitment and adding players in, and what were your learnings from doing that?
Recruitment's I've always found recruitment a difficult subject. Okay, so we have 3 teams tiered by ability in the club. I took from 7 to 9-a-side. I took one boy from our. I'm going to call it the B team. I know that it's called red, whites, and greens from now on, but whatever.
Red, whites, and blues.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah,
That's it all. ABC, but it doesn't matter what you call it. But it's what it is.
So we took a boy from the B team who was ready to come up to us. He performed really well. He was knocking on the door, and it was the right thing to do, right? We brought him in, but probably from a in terms of other boys, then there wasn't anyone else who was ready to make that step. In fact, it probably would have been detrimental to them to make that step, because they would have maybe been a little out of their depth. So we took one boy, and then we bought a couple more boys in, and these were lads that I'd got to know their dads from various extra football activities that all our lads do, and they liked what we did. They liked what we stood for, so they came across as well. But one thing I like about our team, I've never gone after. I think I'm going to come to this at a question, shortly. But I've never gone after. No, that's a lie. Once I went after a boy who I thought was a fantastic player, the best player, and it backfired on me, right? Because they were travelling from too far out, and actually their availability was poor. Couldn't rely on him at training. When he played, he was sensational. I mean, this boy smashed goals in left, right, and centre. And I was probably suckered into thinking, no, this'll work. He's travelling 15 miles to come to training, but this'll work, and it didn't work, right? And so I learned from that. That was early on in the coaching journey, so I learned from it. What I'm really pleased that I have a core group of boys now that are, I think 9 of the 16 players that I have in my 11-a-side squad now are all in the same class in school, and the others are from within a 2 or 3 mile radius. Well, I mean, my son doesn't go to the same school as those 9 boys, but he goes to a school a mile down the road.
I forget he doesn't. I think he's one of the boys from the school. That's
exactly,
how close it is. Yeah.
And they'll come to training on a Saturday morning at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you go around to our local park, it's the same boys that we had in training in the morning playing football in the park in the afternoon.
How it should be.
So that's great. And yes, okay, we've got 1 or 2 others that come from a bit further afield, but I'm talking 15 minutes. I'm not talking an hour's drive, an hour and a half drive. And I think I like the fact that I can truly say, okay, we might not be, we're a really good team. We're not a great team, but we're a really good team. But you know what? The vast majority of this team I've had from under 6s, and they're in school together as well. So from a recruitment perspective, I think my guidance would be, depends where you want to be, right? Okay, if you want to be the greatest team around, if you are hell-bent on, as a coach, having the best team around, then you might have to recruit from further afield. For me, it's a bit of a nonsense. Get a group of boys together who like being together, who are friends, who have a good camaraderie, who have a good familiarity with each other, because what you'll find is that actually they'll fight for each other more on the pitch.
Yeah, and I guess it's that thing where do you want to be a manager or a coach, right? Because if you want to be a manager and you want to just put a team together of strong players, well, fair enough. I mean, it's going to be effective, right? It's going to work. But you're not a coach then, are you? You're managing and then coaching the team you put together,
You're
right?
playing on the PC, right? You're playing
exactly.
Football Manager.
Championship manager. Yeah, exactly. Where if you want to be a coach, then actually, you know what? Take the players, stay local. Grassroots football should be about that, in my opinion, and then coach. And then coach that. Well, this may be a bit of the next question then. I feel like I might have tread on the toes of the next question. But we ask all our guests this question. If there was one, I'm not sure we did episode 8 with you. I can't remember if we did, because I think it came a bit later on, so I'm not sure we did. So it may be duplication of episode 8, or maybe something new, because obviously that's been a way back. But if there was one thing you could change about the world of coaching, what might that be? And I know you'd want to have 50 things. But if you had to choose one, I'd even give you 2 if necessary, but certainly 1 or 2 things that you'd want to change, what might that be?
I mean, the first one's an obvious one. It's I just can't get my head around when I see coaches come into grassroots football, and I've heard coaches come into different levels and say we're going to be the best team in the county. Our aim is in 2 years we're going to win the county cup and this, that, and the other. And I think, well, how are you going to do that? And the answer is that they're going to go and source the best boys from different clubs elsewhere and tempt them in. And we have, without giving the game away, I guess, or mentioning names, but I know of a team locally who are young. They're under 7s or under 8s or something. And all they've done, the coach has sourced players from, I don't know, a 20-mile radius or whatever, to come in and be the best team and win trophies, right? Who's he doing it for? Is he doing it for the boys? He's not. He's doing it for himself and his own ego, right? And it does grate with me, and it grates me a lot more because of the coaching I've been doing with Brentford, and because of the approach there, which is solely about development football. It highlights even more to me when I see these coaches come over and they might bring their teams over for a friendly and they might beat Brentford 3-0, and for them it's like winning the World Cup, and I'm thinking you're missing the point here, lads. You could have 8, 9, 10 local lads in your team who are really going to benefit from playing together. Yes, okay, from a football perspective, but think about the social interaction that they have. Think about the life skills that they're going to think about the long-term friendships that they're going to form. And so, that is one thing I think possibly the main thing, Scott, that really grates me about kids coaching is when coaches make it about themselves and not the kids.
And this whole kind of putting dream teams together, especially at the under 7s, under 8s things, which we've seen a lot more of now than we saw maybe 5 or 6 years ago, even with the older boys teams now, but there wasn't as bad back then. There was a few kind of creeping around, but now it's rife with it. Isn't that what the professional academy system's for? Like, isn't that the idea? I know you can't get signed to under 9s over here, but let's not kid ourselves. They are still pinging players in at Chelsea, Arsenal, whatever else, under 6, 7s, 8s. Why not leave that to them and let grassroots be grassroots? Am I just old-fashioned and a bit of a dinosaur, or is this... Are we missing something here? Okay, and if we're both aligned, what should be done about it? Or what would you recommend? And who should be responsible?
To answer that in a couple of different stages. So firstly, I think you're right. I think one thing that's really stuck in my mind is now you see a lot of these private academies, so-and-so academy, this academy, this academy. You're not an academy. You're a coach who's pulling together the best players from a local area who are paying through the nose because parents think that by coming to you, their kids are going to be, the next Cristiano Ronaldo or whoever it might be, right? It's a nonsense. Let them go and play grassroots football with their mates and enjoy it. Yes, okay, you can have different levels of grassroots. You can have different ability boys in grassroots. You can have different levels of coaching in grassroots. That's fine. But come on, let's not kid ourselves. By going and paying £500 a year to such and such an academy, you're not getting better coaching than you would be if you went and found a really good and well thought out coach at grassroots, right? So that's number one. Number two, in who's responsible, it's absolutely the FA and the local FAs. And I think they turn a blind eye to it. And I feel like I'm about to go on some sort of 45-minute rant here, right? So I'm going to rein myself in. But there has to be some sort of rule and of legislation that actually, do you know what? You should only have players who live within the academies will say this 1 hour rule, right? You can't go and sign for an academy if you're outside of 1 hour. It's a nonsense. I live 10 minutes from Heathrow. if I went there at 2 o'clock in the morning. If I go there at 9 o'clock in the morning, I live an hour and a half away.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so maybe it's within a 2-mile radius, 3-mile radius, whatever it would be. But the FAs have to step in, because it's not only is it detrimental to the local boys who need somewhere to play. They might not be able to get into their grassroots club because there are lads travelling 15 miles, 20 miles to come and play at that club. And so, you know, for coaches out there, listen, I fully understand that I'm a bit lucky here, right, in that I got a year group where I had, in the local area, like I say, within a 5-10 minute walk of each other, I had 7 or 8 really good, talented lads, right? So you could turn around to me and say, well, you're not being realistic, because not every coach has that, look to have that level of boys. And I understand that, but I still think that there's a lot more to it than just pure football. And a bit go back to what I was saying around social interaction, friendships, all that type of stuff. But I do think it's down to the FA, and as you will well know, my opinion of local FAs and grassroots football isn't particularly high. And that will probably bring me on to my 114th point around what could change about grassroots football, and that's the discipline and the behaviour of parents and coaches as well. But maybe that's for a separate podcast, right? I could probably do one on but yeah, be true to your local club, be true to the local boys as well, because like I say, you know, going and getting boys from 15-20 miles away who can play fantastic football together and beat other teams. Championship manager, I was doing it sat in my bedroom in 1997. It's not realistic coaching.
Do you know what, James? It's funny because I think about this, and I know some really nice guys that are doing just this stuff, you know, just recruiting around, and it's so hard because they're good people and they're good guys and they're well intended, but I kind of start doubting myself. Am I just a bit of a dinosaur, and actually this is how things evolve and deal with it, got to move on? But for me, when I look at the foundation phase grassroots space, to me it seems quite clear still. You've got grassroots teams that I believe should be kids from 1 or 2 or 3 local schools, kind of, that are playing in the right spirit for the right reasons. Yes, we want to win, of course we want to win, but it's not like, you know, they know each other, they can hang out together, they can go to the park together, they can go to each other's birthdays, you know, there's all that. Then if you want that bigger picture stuff, if you want to have friends from a further afield that are associated with football because you're at a higher level, but that's what the academies are for. That's what Cat 1, 2s and 3s are out there doing, recruiting those. And there's enough space in those Cat 1, 2s and 3s to go and play, you know, other really strong players at a really challenging level for them, where they can have their 3 sessions a week of training, plus their match days at weekends and everything else. I think, why would you want to blur the two together? And I will hold my hands up here, and as you well know, because you helped me out on a Thursday, we do a kind of private training session thing for select players, but we don't call it an academy, we don't call it an elite, nothing else, and we don't put ourselves in the grassroots space. We do it as a component along grassroots football. So for those players that haven't had the opportunity to get signed by a Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, they can come and play with strong players with us. And ironically, it's full of managers' kids that, you know, want that experience, but we don't get in the way of the local teams.
Absolutely.
And to me that seems okay. We don't go and play in grassroots leagues or grassroots tournaments, because that's not, we go and play academy teams and we don't often win because they're rightly so a better level, but that seems okay. Well, I don't understand why we're blurring these lines, and it seems such a false economy to have success when you're just cherry picking a team together. I don't buy into it.
No, I don't buy into it as well, and if I was being really open, which I will be, it's less about the kids then and more about the coaches.
It feels that way, doesn't it?
Them living their
precarious kind of
failed dreams through the kids, right? And that's what it becomes. I think, yeah, you're right about the Thursday night thing. We do a separate thing. We don't, like you say, we don't call ourselves an academy. We don't promise boys that if you come to us you'll get a trial.
No. Or use the word elite.
Or use the word elite. You and I do it completely voluntarily.
Yep. There's no money in
that one. Yeah. Yep. We don't make a penny of it. It's our own time. All the boys pay for is the pitch.
Yep.
And that's it. And that's the difference. And I think that's okay, personally, because it's not about profit. Yeah. It's not about success. It's about actually bringing boys in. Yes, okay, we bring in it's selecting. We bring in lads who are going to challenge other lads and push them on for their development. right?
Exactly.
So
that.
I don't have,
What you get in the academy system, right? Which is we're trying to do the same thing for those that haven't quite got there yet, to give them an opportunity to see what it's like, and see if they can handle kind of playing against other strong players.
Yeah.
And it's gone well, right? The players love it, and I guess it'd be like your Brentford experience, where it just feels a bit different, doesn't it? The environment's a bit different to grassroots football.
It feels very different. I'll be honest. I have, grassroots football at times does cause me a little bit of stress in that, I mean, we're 11 aside now. I know this is about 9 aside, but we're 11 aside now, and it is very much, lads, you want to be in the squad, you want to win your game time, you come to training and you show us those behaviours that we introduce to our team, that desire to compete, that desire to improve, the resilience, the confidence, the ownership, the teamwork. You bring these things, lads, and you'll have no problem with your game time whatsoever. I think but it does cause me some stresses at times. You're thinking, oh well, this boy, maybe he should play, or maybe this boy should, or maybe this boy's more deserving of a start here. And I it shouldn't be like that, but I do get myself sucked into that sort of thought process. Whereas what we do on a Thursday and what we do at Brentford is great, because all I think of, all my mindset is going into any of them sessions is, what can we do here now to really improve the boys, really develop the boys? What are they going to enjoy, and what's going to bring the best out of them? And I mean, look, it's your baby more than mine on a Thursday night, but I just buzz off those sessions because the intensity and the tenacity at which they train, but the quality at which they bring out as well is it's great. I love it, and I don't want the session to end. I'm
quick,
going 5 more minutes, Scott. 5 more minutes.
Parents are waiting to go home.
Yeah, parents are waiting.
But James, on that one, like what I would love, and we've got some fantastic listeners listen to the podcast, so really good people that I know genuinely care. I know, like we do. Wouldn't it be great if it felt the same like it does on a Thursday night session on a Saturday and a Sunday? Wouldn't it be great, Yeah. And I think if we can get more people thinking and feeling that way, that actually let's put the players first, let's focus on development over results, Let's not worry about beating the guys down the road. Let's just all work together to try and give the players the best possible journey experience. We'd enjoy it more, and it would feel fun. And I love Mondays and Thursdays we do, but I love those sessions, and it's because you haven't got the pressure in inverted commas of match day football. But why is there stress in grassroots football? It actually means nothing, And ironically, there's less stress in academy football, where these players are supposed to be maybe the next professionals. With all respect to our kids, they're probably not going to play professional. Not right now for sure. It should be less stress, not more stress, shouldn't it?
I agree, and you and I had a conversation, didn't we, a little while ago? And I said to you that football's never going to get any easier for these boys as it is now. Every year.
True. Yep.
Every year at grassroots football that you move through from 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to blah 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 gets a little tiny bit tougher. Yeah. But actually, if you look at our boys now coming into under 14s, and we've said this to the boys, lads, football itself is never going to get any easier for you than it is now. So go and play with freedom, go and express yourselves, go and play with a smile on your face and enjoy it. Because actually, I know from experience, once you play in men's football, there'll be times when, do you know what, it just feels hard work. You're going to be disappointed because you're not selected. You're going to be subbed off after 60 minutes and you're going to be frustrated. All these things. And I never played professional football, but think how a professional footballer must feel with all these things, and it is a shame, I think, that the pressures that are put on young lads at grassroots from the coaches, from the parents, that I think probably leads to a lot of very talented footballers just getting to 17, 18-year-olds and thinking, I've just had enough. I'm just going to drop out. Yeah.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's hope that all the stuff we're sharing is part of that process to keep coach enjoying the journey, because actually coach got to enjoy it as well, right? As well as the players, and it all goes on from there. James, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Which has been like, a long experience over many years, and trying to reflect back maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. But it's all part of it, right? One thing affects something else. So you can't just look at today and say, right, where are we at? You've got to look and think what you did previously to get where you got to today.
I would do a number of things differently now if I had my time again. I think what's great now is that there's podcasts like this. When I started, that there wasn't, and I would have benefited massively from it. So hopefully, the message will get through, and this will be some sort of use to coaches just starting on the journey as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Look, I'm sure people want to find out more about you, maybe have questions for you. Is there any way they could do that? Can they reach out to you and find you and talk to you if they want to about some stuff they were doing around maybe going to 9-a-side or into 11-a-side, because that's where you are at now? Would that be something you're open to? And if so, what's the best way of going about that?
Absolutely. I'm probably a rarity nowadays. I'm not really on social media. So, but I know obviously through the podcast you have your Twitter account. So as long as you're happy to field questions from me, I'm more than happy to answer them and have a chat to people if need be as well. Perfect.
We'll have the Twitter handle and the email just in the show notes to the podcast, and then if they want to contact you, then come through us and we'll make sure we forward it to you.
Great.
James, thanks so much for your time. I've enjoyed being in the garden with a beer as well.
It's not been too bad, has it?
It's been all right, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Same time next week?
Tomorrow.
Brilliant. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
This episode was brought to you in association with our friends at Soccer Coach Weekly. Established since 2006, Soccer Coach Weekly is a leading source of inspiration and advice for all grassroots coaches. Join thousands of youth soccer coaches just like you, saving time and effort in their goal of having the most effective, enjoyable and successful coaching journey for them and their players. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode.